everybody. It's Shelly Hoffman with Chief Mike LeFancheck. Chief, it's been about a month, I guess, since we've talked.
Yep.
As much as I love asking what you've been up to for the last month, I'm kind of curious. I've been waiting to ask you about the situation that happened, this past month over off of Downer Street. I had some friends send me a text message saying we're safe because obviously, most of us have friends that live over in that area, but but I guess unfortunately we had kind of a negative thing happen since we spoke.
Yeah, and that is true, and it was a very unfortunate event. I'm sure you're referring to the incident where two people lost their lives over in the apartments over off of Downer Street there, the old Tri-County Mall area. And I had some people, reach out to me after the situation as well and say, is everything okay? Anything to be worried about? And I know there's a lot of inquiry by people, and the sheriff's office ultimately ended up handling that investigation. So why don't maybe I explain how that worked and what the response was and how it came that the sheriffs investigated that incident, not us. We're the primary agency, and what went into that decision-making process. So what happened is we had an individual that lived in those apartments there, usually saw this particular couple outside their apartment. It was a ground floor apartment. That couple liked to sometimes be outside on their little patio area there. And this person hadn't seen them. They went over to the sliding glass door, could see inside the residence, and could see what they believed were two individuals that were deceased. So two members of our department initially responded, one of which was a first line supervisor, sergeant, and then immediately as well was a sheriff's deputy. So our two officers responded. The sheriff's deputy just got there, maybe 30 seconds later, I believe. And our sergeant did a really good job because she said, before we go in there, because we have to obviously enter into the apartment, make sure that the scene is safe, that there's nobody else in there, that if anyone needs first aid, all those types of things that we need to do. But she did a really good job, and she said, all right, let's figure out who's going to take this, who's going to be handling this. And so she contacted me really quickly, and once they'd gone into the apartment, determined what had occurred, and we made the decision at that point that the sheriff's office would be the primary agency to investigate that. And the reason for that is quite simple. We have some very, very capable, very well-trained officers here, but we have a finite amount of them. So, we're an agency of 13 full-time people, 3 part-time people. 2 of our full-time people are assigned up at Baker High School and Durkee Junior High School. And then one of our positions is vacant right now. Officer Null's spot went from his retirement. We have an individual in phase 2 of the police academy now. So for us, we have a limited number of people. And when you start getting into an investigation like that, it takes several people to process the scene, try and determine what occurred. Is there any evidence of value that needs to be brought out of that particular location? Obviously, photographs and measurements need to be made. Also, there's people that then need to speak to neighbors. Notifications to family members need to occur. And then investigations of coworkers, friends, associates to try and determine, is there a motive or any particular reason that this incident would have happened the way it did. And all that takes many more people than, quite frankly, we have available to us in our department. So while we have several people that I would have been very comfortable to have headed up and conduct that investigation, we're limited as to the number of them. And then you consider also our primary mission here is to provide service and road patrol service and answering calls for the village residents. So if we poll several of those people, we still have to take calls. Where the sheriff's office, they have a large criminal investigation division, a number of detectives assigned to that. They have individuals whose only job is to perform evidence technician work, to take photographs, collect evidence. And so when you look at the totality of the circumstance, it doesn't take long to realize that an agency such as the sheriff's office or the New York State Police with their resources as well, would probably be the most appropriate agency to handle that. Because at the end of the day, as I'm making that decision, I'm trying to think about what level of service can we provide, what level of service can another law enforcement agency provide, and if their level of service, because of the size and scope of their organization and the capabilities due to their personnel, are going to be greater than ours, then for the betterment of the village and the betterment of the village residents, we have to make that decision for that agency to be the primary investigating agency. Now, I will say that Sheriff Conway came to the scene. I was in regular consult with both he and one of the captains who was in charge of the criminal investigations division. And that night, Sheriff Conway and I gave a joint press conference. I began the press conference with the media, then the sheriff took over. So that was a very good working relationship, and it was really, really seamless. Our officers remained on scene for several hours to assist and provide resource. Obviously, we would be the agency that would primarily respond to those apartments. So we're familiar with individuals there. We have local knowledge that the sheriff's office utilized. And as the investigation progressed, I was in regular communication with the leadership team from the sheriff's office. So I know sometimes people might say, well, geez, why didn't Baldwinsville investigate that? Why did the sheriffs end up with that? And that's the thought process, and that's the reasoning that goes behind that decision-making process. And, maybe 20, 25 years ago, the thought process might have been, no, we're going to hold on to that investigation and try and take ownership of that because you've got this sense of pride. You don't want to turn it over to another department. And certainly, there was some of that. Obviously, we've got some officers that would have, gained a great deal of experience and could have done a good job. And I'm sure would have, I don't want to say enjoyed that investigation, but enjoyed the opportunity to investigate that incident in the sense that it would have provided them, some opportunity to work a case that traditionally we don't work. But at the end of the day, I, as the head of the organization, have to make a decision that's beneficial to those individuals that are inside that apartment. How can we provide the best service to them, their family, and their loved ones, and to work cooperatively with the sheriff's office in this instance was the correct decision in my mind. We've worked very well with the New York State Police in the past and with the sheriffs. So for me, it didn't take long to make that decision. Everyone who responded has done an excellent job. And just a tragic situation that two people lost their lives there. And I know the sheriffs continue to try and determine an exact motive for that incident, and whether they're able to ultimately determine that, that might just not be something that happens. But that's really how that decision gets made, how that process works. And it's not as if the sheriffs take over or the state police take over and we leave and just turn our backs on that investigation. That's not the way it works at all. We had individuals calling our department the next couple, 3 days, providing information, and we would obviously forward that to the sheriff's office. So we work very, very well cooperatively with the other law enforcement agencies that operate here in the county.
Well, and that obviously goes in line with everything that we've talked about since you and I started speaking with cooperating. I mean, we say that in Baldwinsville in general, that people tend to cooperate with each other. But that process was interesting to listen to, Chief, because most of us only have our knowledge from television, right? If it's on TV or it's on internet, it must be true. But how does that determination get made? Do they come in, swoop it, take it away, or is it a sense of like you said, 20 years ago, maybe having that pride of not wanting to give something up? But it's nice to know that at the end of the day, the underlining thought is what's best for getting, justice, or for people, the families, to understand exactly what happened. And you're right, 13 people. And if you watch any of those shows or you follow things online that happen in real life, it takes a lot more than 13 people. And if all 13 of you were focusing on that, then what happens to the rest of the village? So thanks for explaining that.
Sure.
That's the information that we don't know. We trust you guys to do your job, but it's nice to have that information as to how to do it.
And Sheriff Conway and Under Sheriff Jason Casalia, they do a great job with the sheriff's office and making sure that they're helpful They would have done anything we really wanted. If we had said, no, we're going to keep it, we want your assistance, they probably would have done that as well. And excuse me, Captain Jeff Robb and I from the state police spoke the following day, and the state police are exactly the same. We've worked investigations with them in the past. If you remember, a year or two ago, we had an individual accidentally fall into the canal and drowned, and that was quite an investigation. And the state police were instrumental in helping us to solve it. And they provided a great deal of resources. So, and I think if you look at our agency, you look at the school, where the school district has school resource officers from both the Baldwinsville Police Department and the Sheriff's Office. There's no turf battles. There's no worry about who's getting what credit. We work cooperatively together, and that just really carries over. And, I appreciate the level of professionalism from both those organizations. And I certainly hope and am confident that they feel the same about ours.
No, and I gotta believe that they absolutely do. Not that I talk to them, but I would think so. And like I said, I felt bad starting off. Usually we have kind of a lighthearted back and forth when we first get started, but that was something that, people are still a little bit talking about. It's a shame that it happens in any community, but in Baldwinsville, we forget that things like that can happen here as well. So
yeah, and as I, and then the following night, we had an individual who overdosed and passed away in the village as well. And we're working that investigation to try and determine where that person obtained their narcotics that killed them, is what we believe. We're awaiting toxicology reports, but we feel very confident that that's the case. So there's a lot of other things going on that what we call, again, routine matters. These are calls that we go on a regular basis and investigations we deal with. And to have an investigation of that size and scope with a limited amount of resources we have would overwhelm the agency. So, we normally do have a nice light banner, but that's certainly a situation that's very uncommon for the village. It's not something that occurs regularly, and I think it was appropriate for us to begin and to educate our residents and the people listening as to how those decisions get made and what's the thought process behind them, and how those types of investigations work and function.
No, I appreciate it. I'm sure everyone else does as well. Right before we got on, we did talk about what we always talk about, which is, the cars in the village.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about you this morning as I was car starting from inside my house because we had snow. And you said something interesting about, I did it from my house with my little clicker, but you said that some people use their key and that's a problem.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because, and I know, Shelley, you and I for a long time now, and I know the mayor has picked up the ball and run with it as well at my request, trying to educate our public to please lock their car doors at night. As I spoke to our Lieutenant Mike Lockwood, a couple of the officers that are on duty this morning, I said to them, hey, I'm talking with Shelley today at 10 o'clock. Is there anything particular you would like me to mention? Any major incident? I knew we were going to talk about the incident we just spoke about and some other stuff. And one of the guys was like, Chief, I know you talk about this all the time, but can you tell people lock their car doors? It's countywide. There's a group of kids that are going out and they're taking stuff out of cars. They're stealing cars if the keys are in them, and tell them to, if they're going to start the cars, not to start it with their key and just walk away from it, leave it unlocked. He goes, because if they do that for 10, 15, 20 minutes, it might not be there when they come out to find it. So I said, I'll be happy to mention that. So I would just, again, because we have our night parking ban coming up as well. So those two things are a little bit hand in hand, where you can't park on the street starting November 15th from 1:30 in the morning till 6. And I'll get to that and what the rhyme and reason behind that is. And but we started talking about that, Shelley, back when we first were on, I think in March. So several months ago. We've almost come full circle here a little bit. But both Baldwinsville, you look at our crime stats, you look at our ranking and statewide, we are a very, very, very safe community. Very safe. But that doesn't mean we don't have crime occur here. And that doesn't mean that we have individuals come from outside our community that commit crime here, because that does happen. So I would just reiterate and ask again for our residents to please lock your car doors. And then if you're going to start your car, do what Shelly just explained, use a remote car starter, and not go out, take your key, start your car with your key, and then leave your car unlocked with the keys in it. That's a recipe for having the car stolen. And we would just ask you not to do that. And then obviously, I know the mayor mentioned this just a couple days ago, but starting on November 15th, we've got a night parking ban that goes in effect. And I can assure you, we do not enjoy, our officers do not enjoy issuing parking tickets for that overnight parking ban. We're going to start out for the first few weeks, obviously issuing warning tickets on the cars, but then we're going to have to start ticketing the vehicles. And the reason for that is very simple. If you look on a good portion of our village streets, this village was settled and developed in the mid 1800s. And some of these streets haven't been widened since that point in time. And when you get snowbanks, and then if the plows, our DPW, and those guys do a great job. They're up early in the morning. They're out plowing so people can get to work. But if there's cars parked on the street, when they try and plow, they can't get the roads cleared properly. And then if there's an emergency and you look at the size of the fire trucks or even the ambulances, which are much larger than even just our patrol vehicles, it becomes problematic for them to get where they need to go in a safe fashion, certainly effective and as quick as possible. And as the winter goes on, the snowbanks get higher and the streets tend to become narrower. And then we can't have vehicles parked on the street. So that's why we start now in November. We issue our warning tickets and we try and gain compliance through that fashion. And then after a few weeks, we are going to start issuing parking tickets, and we ask our overnight officers to do that. Again, it's not something we look forward to do. It's not, the quote unquote fun part of our job, but it goes to public safety. It really does. And just put yourselves in those people's shoes. If you were, that family that needed assistance for whatever reason, and dependent upon the fire department or the ambulance to get there to render first aid or assistance to you, your family, your property, or a loved one, you would want them to be able to get there as quickly as possible. So you're going to have to park in your driveways.
How much is the parking ticket when you guys issue it? Is it?
It's $25 per time. $25 each time. So again, we don't do it as a revenue generator. That's not something that the village board has ever said to me and said, "Hey, chief, we need your troops to start issuing a bunch of parking tickets and that's our goal here." That's not the goal for the organization at all. The goal is so our DPW can plow the streets effectively, so that way residents and especially emergency vehicles can get where they need to go.
Okay. So I just have another general new residents question. I don't plan on parking on the street. But if I did get the $25 fine, is it something that I just mail into you guys?
There's instructions on the summons itself, and yes, you would have to handle that most likely via mail right now, because obviously with the COVID pandemic, our court is only seeing criminal cases right now. Any vehicle in traffic or parking matters, they're handling via mail. So you could obviously call the court clerk's office and talk to Cheryl or Deb over there, who I'm sure would explain what would have to occur. But there are instructions right on the parking ticket itself as to how to pay a fine or mail it in, or if you wanted to contest it, how you might do that also.
Okay. And I only mention that because of COVID. I'm
Yes.
sure usually in the past people would probably just walk in, say hi, right? Maybe but
there's a drop box out in front of the village hall, attached to the village hall itself, actually, and people are dropping off. I see them all the time drop off their water bills or tax bills, and I know people drop off some fine money if they have to for court as well. And during the daytime, I know our clerks, I believe they check that hourly. They go out there to check that just to ensure if there's anything there, that nothing's in there for any great period of time, and so they can process it in a timely manner as well.
Okay. Now, we didn't talk about Halloween at all. I wasn't here, as most people know, if you're friends with me. I took a trip down to Pittsburgh. The cow and the chicken, if you saw them on the streets, Chief, that was my daughter and a friend. Apparently, they were a big hit on the streets of Baldwinsville. They didn't send me a picture, so I don't know what it looks like, but they said it wasn't overly busy. I know the pizza shops were really busy, but how did it go from your end?
From our end, we had extra patrols on, like we do every year. We try and put extra patrols out just so we're visible. And because there are so many people out walking around, and obviously the last few years it's been a little rainy and, excuse me, dark out, and so we try and have some visibility with us and the fire department, the ambulance corps. Well, we noticed the same thing. Your cow and chicken. We didn't get any complaints about unruly cows or chicken. I don't
No.
believe. I'll check the logs to be certain of that, but
Thank you.
I'll let the officers know where to track those suspects down if so. Um, but even in my neighborhood as well, the number of children was greatly reduced, which I can certainly understand. I just keep my fingers crossed and knock on wood that next year at this time we'll be back to some semblance of normal, be able to do some of those things that we enjoy doing. Certainly every year I enjoy sitting on my front porch and you see the neighbors come around and you talk to the adults and, the kids I can't recognize because they're all done up, but at least you see the parents' faces. And it's nice to see your neighbors because, out and about because everyone's so busy and sometimes you don't get a chance to. But from our point of view, we didn't have any major problems at all. It was much more subdued than it has been in the past.
Good. So hopefully the people that did go out, I know there was sometimes people just did something on their street. There was things on Facebook about little parties with groups you're always hanging
Yep.
out with, like that.
Yep.
So
I saw that
nice.
as well. And I actually did the same thing with my neighbors. We sat over. I brought my bowl of candy and sat over with them in their driveway, and they had their fire pit going. It worked out very well. I do have an Officer Rosie update, by the way.
Oh, good. How is she?
I don't know if anyone saw on our Facebook page. If you haven't, I encourage you to go to the Baldwinsville Police Facebook page. But we had a live link, and late last week, Officer Rosie actually rang the bell a second time at Gallisano Hospital, completing a very aggressive round of treatment, and that was a great thing to see as well for us. Obviously, with the COVID pandemic, our plans for Officer Rosie to drive around in her patrol car in the downtown area, those have been delayed. But obviously, her health and wellness and safety are the most important things. And hopefully next year we'll get to her being out on patrol a little bit more. But that was a very heartwarming thing to see, and we were able to partner with Rosie's family on that and have it on our Facebook page as well as theirs. And that was a great thing to see.
Yeah, I did see that. She's just adorable anyway, and she's
All
such
right.
just great outlook, great personality. I'm feeling this year we're going to see her ride around in the patrol car.
I'm
I just,
certainly very hopeful of that. Yes, very, very
right.
hopeful. Yes, without a doubt.
Was there anything else that you can think of in the last month that you want to share, or any warnings for the upcoming November, December season that you want to put out there before we part ways?
It's inevitable that we're going to see an uptick in motor vehicle crashes over the next 3-4 weeks or so as snow starts to fly on the roadways. I can guarantee that our officers are going to come in, and I'm going to hear them say, people are forgetting how to drive, for God's sake, in the snow, because they drive too close and inevitably they can't stop and they run into someone or back end or someone, and our officers end up having to get out in the snow and in the blowing and the sleet and the slush and take those reports. So I can guarantee that I'm going to hear some of those. So I would just ask folks to please, take a little extra time, especially, we're all on that same routine we have. We get up, we leave the house a certain time. Well, now you might have to brush off your car, might have to, as you talked about, warm the car up, get the windshield cleared off, all those types of things. Now you might be running 5 or 10 minutes late. The roadway is not the place to make up those 5 or 10 minutes. You're going to have to get those 5 or 10 minutes on the front end and adjust our morning routines a little bit for that. So that's just one note of caution. It's like clockwork every year, to hear the officers say that. I'm sure I was saying it when I was on road patrol, and I'm betting 20 years from now, when I'm long gone from this profession, officers are going to be saying it then too. They certainly live in this climate up here. They live in Central New York. They work here in Baldwinsville. So that's the one main thing. Other than that, Shelley, I continue to say this every time. I really appreciate the opportunity for us to get together, for me to talk to the community. I know the mayor does as well, and the other individuals. But as we look at a case like we just had recently, it's nice for me to be able to explain to the public in this type of forum what that decision making process is, and how we do that. And again, our goal here, and certainly mine, is to be as transparent as we possibly can with the community, and to provide as much information as we can to the community about how we make decisions and how we operate. We're really a function of the residents. We gain our authority in standing from our residents and from the village board, who are obviously the elected representatives of village residents like yourself. And that's how we operate. It's a great opportunity. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to send those in either to Shelley or myself through our Facebook page, or via email, police@baldwinsville.org. Again, police@baldwinsville.org. It's pretty simple. Those come right to me. And if it's something urgent, I'll respond back. Otherwise, something I'll hold and we'll talk about it, because chances are if someone asks a question, someone else has probably thought about it and for whatever reason just didn't send it in.
No, that's 100% true. So, well, thank you again for your time, Chief,
Sure.
and for explaining that, because I told you I started this because I figure if I have questions, other people do as well.
Mhm.
And you've always been gracious in answering them. So I appreciate it.
I look forward to it every month.
All right. Talk to you soon.
All
Bye.
right. Bye for now.